As we move from some of the practical stitching of the Singer Elite ME457 and move towards some of the decorative stitches, I've switched up my thread to a variegated thread, so it'll look a little fun. So here we're going to talk about using a zigzag, turning it into a satin stitch for applique. I hope you'll check out all the videos that we've done. There's links below where you can start the beginning and start mastering your Singer sewing machine. If you've got a machine with the dials, you're going to find most of the information will cross over from machine to machine. So this machine does come with a presser foot that is clear. Now the reason that this is more important to use for the satin stitching is because we're going to make a very, very dense stitch. Now on a regular presser foot, so I'm going to touch the little button in the back to drop off this foot, you can kind of see that there's just a little cutout after the stitch is made, but there's not a lot of room for anything that's been maybe stitched thickly. On a clear foot, I know it's a little hard to see, but it has a completely cut out groove all the way to the back of the foot. Plus, I'm going to be able to see where I'm going. So I'm going to switch feet, just hold it and then lower the foot down till it clicks into place. And I'm going to slide the thread underneath the foot and to the back. I've also added some stabilizer, which is key for any of the stitches that you're going to stitch out decoratively or even change so they're fairly dense. So we're going to just use this little piece as a place to practice. So to start off, go ahead and move it to the zigzag location. And then for length, we're going to be somewhere between 1 and 0. So we can even just start there. We'll kind of work our way down and I'll show you what we're looking for. Stitch width, how about we start somewhere around 3 or 4? That's a nice middle size, not too wide, but not too narrow. And let's just leave the needle position in the center. So as we stitch, I'm going to be turning the stitch length knob a little at a time towards 0 until I see the stitch get all the way closed up that none of the fabric shows through. You can see a little of the fabric showing, so I'm going to just slowly turn it while I'm stitching. And yes, that is something that you can do. So I pretty much want to get it so it's still moving through the machine without me trying to help it along, but so it doesn't pile up. And you're going to see what really looks best when we're done. So let's just kind of take a look at where the settings are. I think I can even bring it a little bit closer, but you can see the gradual change in stitch length. So let's just go ahead and do a little bit more. Keep sewing. And this is why you want to use stabilizer, because your fabric is going to start to pull together, and without anything underneath it, it's going to be even more wrinkly if you don't use stabilizer. Ooh, now this is what we're talking about. So once you really get a good looking satin stitch, you can easily see that what we had before was okay, but what we have now is so much better. And so many times people do a satin stitch, I'm like, oh, it could be so much more dense and look better, but that's okay. This is what I think of when I think of a satin stitch. Now that it's started, it got to the length that works. Now, depending on your thread thickness, this will be changing, because if you had a thinner thread, we'd be able to keep going before we'd pile up. It would be thinner. So if you're working with a thicker thread, you'll find that the closeness appears much sooner. Now we can play around with stitch width. So we can go all the way up to 6, and we can go all the way down. Well, if we went to 0, we'd get a straight stitch. But look at the difference. Now, since we're doing this much, let's go ahead and experiment. I'm going to move the needle position to the far left. So now the stitch is going to be like left justified instead of being centered. And for fun, and I am going to bring the needle up before I move my needle position to the far right. So now it's stitching more on the right side of the foot. And there's a time and place for you to adjust, being that what you're going around to, what to follow, but you have the center, you have the left, you also have the right. Now if you're at the full width, obviously that's not going to make any difference there, but you can find the perfect width and length and needle position just with a little practice on some fabric that you've pre-stabilized, and you can dial it in. Now we're going to play around with some of the decorative stitches with this decorative thread and show you some of the cool things that this machine will stitch.